Morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning to participate in this last couple of sessions for community outreach around the Brooklyn Village project. In this phase of the work, the community outreach does not end with this, but we are trying to wrap up the first phase and take back the comments and the information that we've heard from folks as we've done these sessions. And we will be sharing what we've learned and what we've heard tomorrow night at the town hall meeting at the Government Center in room 267, starting at 6. Prior to that, at 5:30, we will be showing in full the documentary A Colored School by Catherine Fry and some other folks. So we hope that you will come join us for the documentary, as well as come and listen to us share what we have heard in this session and each of the sessions prior to this. Obviously, this project is a large undertaking. It's a very important undertaking, and we believe that it's vital that it's done the best way that we possibly can. So your help, your participation is greatly appreciated as we move through this phase of the process and then into negotiations and ultimately seeing a shovel hit the dirt. So we're very excited about where we are and where we're heading today. My name is Dennis Lacaria, Senior Assistant to the County Manager. I'm joined by Monty Ritchie, who's the CEO of Conformity Corporation. Currently, we have Greg Kola from the Peoples Corporation and Jeffrey Simon from Stantec also at the table. Monty's going to walk us through a presentation about the project itself, and then we will be open to questions and comments on any topic relative to the work that lies ahead of us. And with that, turn it over to Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you, Dennis. Morning. Can I ask for a quick show of hands if you've not been to any session that we've held so far? Anybody who's not been to any session that we've put together? Okay, so say 4 or 5 folks. Okay, thank you. Today we're doing this repeatedly, and the idea being that we catch some folks near the end of our effort who've not had an opportunity to listen to us go through this before. So thank you for being here with us. My name is Monty Ritchie. I'm president of the Conformity Corporation. We were founded in 1993. Have 5 employees. We've never been more than 10. We have about $250 million in development under our belt. A variety of projects, all urban infill and mixed use within 3 miles of Trade and Tryon. The project that folks tend to recognize is a recent one, which is the Lowe's Home Improvement Center in South End, with about 150,000 square feet of mixed use wrapped around it. The Five Guys, Noodles, Wine Loft, all the office space, and 70 housing units that adjoin the Lowe's there in Dilworth. We're going to run through an overview of the project, how it's put together, take a quick look back on what it is that we've done so far to get to this point, and then and even faster look forward, since we're nearing the end of the process, at least for the time being, until unless the county tells us otherwise. Mentioned a little bit about Conformity Corp already. My partner, Peoples Corporation, joined the team after we made it through the RFQ. They came on board during the RFP phase. Dennis mentioned Greg Kola, who's their head of investments. And we have with us also Jeffrey from Stantec, Jeffrey Simon, global design and engineering firm, about 22,000 people around the world. Also, Craig Lewis is here with us from Stantec in the back. Thank you guys for being here. Locally, we have a bunch of folks on the team. Some of these names you'll recognize, others perhaps not. Perkins and Will, Colgenest and Stone, who designed the First Ward, most recent Ward Park, First Ward. Also the Green, where the Ratcliffe is located across from the Modern Museum of Art. I want to thank Gwen for all of her work with Urbane Environments. Yellow Duck, CBRE, Jennifer Stanton, who's a retail consultant, Legacy Real Estate Advisors, a brokerage firm that we're planning to do some work with, and many others. Beep, beep, beep. There we go. Here's some imagery of projects completed by Peebles, and they're in a variety of major markets across the country, and with a particular focus up and down the eastern seaboard, strength in hotels as well as mixed-use office and retail. These are projects completed by Conformity Corp. I just want to take a quick break and ask who I'm looking at to drive slides. Somebody's pushing these slides. Okay, thank you, because the remote's dead. These are recent projects by Conformity Corp. You see an example of preservation in the lower right. The other projects are all mixed use. The one in the lower left is the primary mixed use building at Southborough, and the other two are in historic districts near Charlotte's urban core, Trade and Tryon. Both of those happen to be in Elizabeth. Next slide, please. Additional information on Stantec that I mentioned earlier. This project would be serviced from their Charlotte office. They have an office set up in Airsley. Next slide. So the overarching theme here in getting to where we are today, say the earliest, I would say that our earliest conversations were built around the notion that we somehow needed to honor and get as close to doing some type of justice as we possibly could, given the difficult history in Brooklyn, and that is a tough thing to undo, obviously. But what can we do to honor the essence and the spirit of Brooklyn going forward? And that's been a driver for us from the get-go. One of the hinge points for Brooklyn, of course, is the Second Ward High School National Alumni Foundation. They remain highly organized and engaged, and they've been very welcoming, and it's been instructive for me and the team to have their feedback. Of course, Brooklyn was more than the Second Ward High School, but interestingly, the Second Ward High School was more than Brooklyn because it drew from all of the African American communities in the region, because if you wanted to send your child to high school and you were black, they were going one place. It didn't matter whether you lived in Brooklyn, Greenville, or where you lived, you were going to the Second Ward High School. So that's been very helpful to have their feedback. Next slide, please. It's a quick overview of the program. About 2,300,000 square feet of all product types. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we'll be right there to take questions when we're done. Any of this that you want to go into in more detail, we can certainly do. So we're going to run through the design real quick. This is a view from McDowell looking towards uptown Charlotte on 2nd Street. So some of you will recall that Martin Luther King Boulevard was previously named 2nd Street. What you see here is the actual road life of 2nd Street that was removed with urban renewal. With Martin Luther King being renamed, we took the opportunity to seize on 2nd Street since it was available, and we were able to place the road where it was once lying. You have retail on the bottom floor here in the foreground on the right, and some housing up top. There's a condo building beyond that. And then way off in the distance there's a little office building that's around the park. There's an Even Hotel on the left with more retail on the bottom floor. And these streets will be designed to be as protective as possible for the pedestrian. So when you think about some great urban contexts that you've been in where there's on-street parking, street trees, that type of thing that really help tame traffic for the pedestrian, that's the type of thing that you're seeing here and that you'll see throughout Brooklyn Village. Next slide, please. This is 2nd Street again, but at the other end now with your back towards the skyline and you're looking out towards McDowell. The park's on the left, the condo building's a little bit closer now here, dominating the slide in the middle. You have some restaurant space on the right, and then a little bit of the Even Hotel peeking out at the end of the sidewalk there beyond the little guy in the trench coat there. That's the corner of the Even Hotel. Next slide. This is an aerial view of the mixed use along Stonewall, which is a combination of another hotel brand, a Staybridge extended stay hotel, and then you have housing, and beyond that, a focal point, about 21 stories, I believe, office building with some retail on the bottom floor. Stonewall on this side of the street, which would be the south side of Stonewall, from the football stadium all the way down to Metropolitan Midtown, is under development right now. Charlotte Center City Partners has put together a group called the Stonewall Consortium. We're a part of that group, and we look forward to doing everything we can to help turn that into a viable corridor. Of course, today it's not very friendly for pedestrians, and we're all going to be working together to try and clean that up a little bit. Next slide. This is a view looking back towards the skyline. You have our office building on the left, and then you're looking up past projects that are being launched by others, an apartment building done by Prophet Dixon. Then you see a gray building that's sort of rising off the slide there, which is being done by David Raven and the Northwood Companies. And after that is Crescent's project, and so on as you move towards the stadium. Next slide. So Brooklyn Village is organized into two distinct pieces, Brooklyn Village South and Brooklyn Village North. The buildings that we were just looking at, they make up Brooklyn Village South at the intersection of Stonewall and McDowell. Can you just flick back there one time and then, so this is Brooklyn Village South. Flick back to the plan if you would, thank you. So a combination of housing, hotel, parking, and retail here. It's about 5 acres. You can see the little cul-de-sac at the top of the slide there as Alexander Street, which is an interesting little tool that helps us get access to the property and so on. Next slide. And this is Brooklyn Village North. So Brooklyn Village North tends to be a little more intimate. It's more protected from a planning perspective. Second Street doesn't go anywhere. Alexander Street is a dead end on both sides because it's been removed elsewhere. But that is the original road lie of Alexander Street. We have some housing, office, the park is here, several housing options actually, including for sale and for lease. Large format, retail, local retail, hotels, et cetera. So this is a very intense site. The dashed line that you see running through the site is Myers Passage. I'm going to talk about that in a little more detail here shortly. Next slide, please. So Myers Passage was something that Conformity advanced early on as a planning centerpiece, something that sort of glues everything together while also speaking to the history of the neighborhood. Myers Street is an important street for a number of reasons, most of which I don't have time to cover, but the most obvious of those is the fact that the Myers Street Elementary School was located on Myers Street. The gymnasium, which is the only remnant that survives from the Second Ward High School, was at the hard corner of First Street and Myers. The road that we think of today as Martin Luther King actually doesn't lay on top of any road as they were originally configured. First Street was right up against the gymnasium. So when you get out there and you look at the land, Myers Street presents itself. It's there if you look closely. So there's a courts building just above the yellow square at the top here. Right across the street from Brooklyn Village North, you have an old civil courts building that belongs to Mecklenburg County, and there's a big breezeway that proceeds through that building. And that breezeway sits right on top of Myers Street. And there are other elements that, again, I'll spare you the details on, but the ghosts of that street are there, and it becomes, it really works well as an organizing element for Brooklyn Village North and South, and allows us to glue the two sites together with a pedestrian way, bikeway that runs in between the Mecklenburg Aquatic Center and the old Second Ward High School site. Next slide, please. So you can see that a little more clearly here. The Myers Passage proceeds through the Civil Courts building, and then it wends its way on up through the government complex, all the way up to First Ward, where there are 2 blocks of Myers Street still existing, and then on up into the First Ward. As you come down here, you can see the yellow building here in the middle. This is the Second Ward Gymnasium, the Myers Street Myers Street Elementary School would have been right in this region, and it comes on through and doing a variety of things here. Ultimately, the long-range connectivity plans for Charlotte-Mecklenburg over the freeway and getting down to Pearl Street Park and so on. So we just tried to anticipate those things. We're not delivering on all those things today, but we've done to. Sure.
Can you show me on that map where the Mecklenburg County Aquatic Center is?
Sure. The Mecklenburg County Aquatic Center is right here.
Okay, and where is the gym?
The gymnasium's right here. So this is all the parking for the aquatic center.
It's my understanding that we're going to connect the aquatic center to the gym.
There are discussions about that. Certainly, the gymnasium's being renovated, and how they will ultimately be connected is something that's being discussed right now. Yep. Next slide. Here's another view of Myers Passage with all of our buildings laid in digitally. You can see it proceeding past the Aquatic Center, which was just referenced, and through to Brooklyn Village South. Here it comes through the courtyard on an apartment building and proceeds up past the park and then through the breezeway and the courts building and on up into First Ward. Do I need to be near the mic? Okay, sorry about that. Next slide, please. Another image of the plan. This time looking out towards Metropolitan Midtown. We have an eye towards, skirting these freeways is always a terribly difficult thing. And, if you think of Europe or Charleston or any great context, you keep turning the corner and you keep walking because there's something magnetic that's pulling you along through the blocks, right? Most of the times it's in those places, it's aesthetics and things that are just interesting that you want to go see. So how do you put something together that sort of responds to the human condition and gets people to make the trip under 277 on Stonewall and under 277 on Stonewall? That thinking is really what led us to put a large piece of architecture right there in the form of the office building, the tall office building, with an eye towards creating a gate post that helps draw people underneath 277 and move folks back and forth between Uptown and Metropolitan Midtown, and of course the Greenway is in between, just beyond 277 and in front of the Metropolitan Midtown there, so we want to make that connection as well. Next slide. We have a park here that is roughly 2 acres. We have roughly 2 acres of green space or usable open space overall, and that presents in a number of different ways. We have this organized green space. We have the Myers Passage that we talked about, and we're going to talk in a minute about this festival street that we have in mind. Next slide. Again, a view of the park. Next slide. So this is, Second Street lends itself to being closed off from time to time for pop-up retail, just having folks spill out of the park and out of the local retail into this 2-block condition here where the traffic can be eliminated entirely with very little impact to the surrounding uptown areas' ability to move cars around. So this is something that we'll continue to explore. We'll need to get driveway entrances, garage entrances located properly, and think through. We have to anticipate how it is that we want this to behave, but we feel pretty strongly we're going to be able to get a behavior like this to come together. And we're referring to this as our festival street. Next slide. That ties to Myers Passage and continues on across to Brooklyn Village South. Next slide. Here you're seeing an example, an idea around some installations, and we've talked, I think, most deeply with folks from the Second Ward High School National Alumni Foundation and former Brooklyn residents about this. These are just notions. At some point, this park will be designed, and when the park is designed, there'll be another public process entirely that is apart from and as unique. It has nothing to do with what it is that we're doing today. The size of the park and those types of things, we're of course discussing those things now, but how we ultimately end up programming the park will be something that the community continues to have input on. These were ideas in homage to the 13 churches that were lost in the form of the gable that you see here along with the stained glass. There's some concrete here that has old Sanborn maps etched into from Brooklyn Village, etched into the horizontal plane. We thought these were clever ideas. They've met with, some enthusiasm, but that's all they are, is ideas. We'll collect other ideas as we move forward. Next slide, please. This is a look back on the things that we've done so far. So we started back in well, we started back in November, actually, of last year, but our kickoff meeting for, in communicating with the public was August 4th. And we've done a number of things since then: history and cultural programming and design, MWSBE participation, affordable housing and open space, and economic opportunity and the approach to retail. Every one of these sessions has ended with Q&A sessions that are at least a half hour long, usually longer, just as today's will. And I think we've had attendance anywhere from, say, 35 at a lightly attended meeting to close to 200, I think, on the kickoff. Next slide. So here we are, general information sessions, and appreciate you all being here for the 10:30. We'll continue these throughout the day. And then tomorrow night, we will be working from an entirely different set of slides that reflects all the information and feedback that we've collected as a result of these meetings over the past 3 months. And I hope you all can make it to that. If you cannot, the information will, of course, be public. It'll be on our website. It'll be on the county's website. All of these meetings are videotaped. So it's next to impossible to miss the information if you have to get after it for some reason and want to follow up, even if you can't make the meeting. Next slide. Here's our contact information. You should feel free to use it. I encourage you to use it. Our Facebook, Twitter, and accounts, and then our webpage, and then Mecklenburg County's webpage down below. Next slide. And that's it. We're going to take questions and answers. So we're going to sit down here and act like we know what we're talking about, and take your feedback and and answer questions.
And we do ask that you use the microphone as it comes around, because we are videotaping this session, and that way the audio will be captured for the folks who watch the video.
Good morning.
Morning.
A couple of questions. First of all, what percent of the housing and first session, so I'm sure it was covered in prior sessions, but what percentage of the housing is going to be mixed rate? Or of overall housing is going to be mixed rate? And then of the overall housing that is mixed rate, what percentage of that is going to be, would be classified as affordable or?
So we have 1,070. We have 1,070 rental units. Is that registering? There we go. 1,070. As I said, I'm going to bring those levels down a little bit, blowing myself out. 1,070 units, rental units, 107 of them, 10%, are workforce affordable to 80% of AMI. So those units, for instance, on a one-person household, open in the 900 and change range and per month, and they proceed upwards from there based on the number of folks in the household.
And the last question is, what was the general tenor of the community input that you got? What were some of the more interesting kinds of feedback that you got as it relates to the integrity of the Brooklyn as a once thriving community, and how that is how you maintain this sort of consistency and context. Was there any feedback that you got with regards to that, any of that at all?
We did. We received a good bit of feedback related to that issue. I'm going to take the opportunity to kind of spread this around a little bit and see if anyone wants to run with that one. Otherwise, I'm happy to together. Okay. So,
Monty, one thing, first and foremost, that is kind of the focus of the town hall meeting tomorrow night, is to report out what we've heard. So we don't want to exactly go into full detail, because we're also hoping to hear things today. So we want to hear feedback from you and understand that what we're planning to share tomorrow is not totally baked, because we were leaving open the idea that we may hear new things, new comments, new ideas, new feedback that had not previously been brought to bear on the process, because there may be new folks engaged. So I would like to start first by asking you if you've got any sort of feedback or input before we go into some of the things heard.
Is there anything that that's top of mind for you that you'd like to share?
Well, actually, I'm not from Charlotte originally, so I have very little context as it relates
Hey.
to Brooklyn as a community, although I am familiar, very familiar with urban renewal and the
Effect, pardon me, the effect that urban renewal has had on African-American communities. And I know that there has been, I think there's a sense of opportunistic approaches to development that are post-urban renewal that we need to keep in mind, and I'm sure you guys are fully aware of that. And I was just really more concerned about those folk that have been part of the community at one point, and you have engaged with what their feedback has been in regards to what they'd love to see take place in terms of the overall development of this. Thank
And
you.
we're actually fortunate enough to have some of those folks here right now, actually, so, which has been a really gratifying part of all of this process, in fact, is that we have been engaged by former residents of Brooklyn, former students of Second Ward High School, and folks who are able to share that history and context and make it real so that it's not just something you're seeing in a book or a picture or from a story that was handed down second or third hand, but from folks who actually live there. And so I'd also welcome anything from Ms. Lucas, Ms. Ely, anybody who wants to share anything that you've got.
Believe it or not, these have all run without a hitch through the first 20 or so of these. Yeah, so we're just going to get this all out of the way this morning, apparently, at 10:30.
I didn't need to say. Okay, I was a part of urban renewal. I lived in the Brooklyn neighborhood. Almost all of the meetings that BK Partners, they've had. And we have been real concerned about affordable housing. And we're concerned about the size of the park. That was one of my major concerns. They said the park was not being used. Downtown area. So now they're going to put people in the neighborhood, build housing, affordable housing and otherwise, and size of the park. So that was one of my concerns, that the park, I was hoping would remain the same by the people that are going to be living in the area.
I would say that captures the two dominant themes of parks and affordable housing. And on the more ethereal front, to answer your question more completely, just getting the energy right, doing everything that we possibly can to deliver folks to the sidewalks, deliver an integrated community, so that the energy that folks associated with what was a thriving mixed-use community prior to being raised, that we get as close to that as we can. I have been pleasantly surprised, I suppose, that we don't hear from folks replace Brooklyn, build Brooklyn back. We never hear that type of thing, but we do hear a lot, and we've discussed a lot, and we've considered, I think, deeply, how do we get the nod and the acknowledgement of what happened here, but being very, very careful to not pander and to not have that behave in a way that is distasteful. And, I suggest that's a difficult line to walk, but that's the line we hope to walk with feedback from the community. And it doesn't end with tomorrow's town hall meeting. The county commissioner will want to hear about how we stay engaged going forward.
Also, just one point, the fact that they're ready to see this happen. They've waited a long, long time. And I know that everyone's in a rush to get that first phase going, that first building. So, it's been a long, long time.
I have a question over here.
Can I just add one point just specifically on question about what the outreach, I kind of think of it in three buckets. One is the history that everyone has talked about, and as Monty said, the focus has been on the vitality of the area, and how to bring that vitality really in. Second area is on the development itself, and that's the program that Monty ran through, and then some site issues and connectivity, and all of those kinds of issues that have to do with the plan itself. And then the third area that we actually spent quite a bit of time talking about is economic opportunity, and how to really take this opportunity that we have and bring it to the broader Mecklenburg County community to create that kind of economic opportunity that a development like this can bring to the area. And that's been a very,
Specific economic opportunity.
making sure that there's lots of opportunities for lots of different people to participate in the success of this, whether it is working on the development itself or working on construction, or we spent a lot of time talking about the fact that we're creating some very small entrepreneurial startup spaces in the retail that otherwise, that ordinarily you wouldn't see in a kind of retail development, to try to give people that opportunity to bring something special to this area where they might not have an opportunity somewhere else.
Specifically 35% MWSB participation, which is $227 million. So huge commitment, a very, very difficult goal. It's not lost on us that, saying that is one thing, but I don't imagine that, and please raise your hand if I've got this wrong, I've never walked that line before, 35%. And it's going to be tough, and it's a big commitment from our team that's reflective of our acknowledgement that there are some disparities. So hopefully, pumping $220+ million into communities that are represented by MWSB certification can help with that in some way. Certainly not a minor commitment.
Can you tell me what MWSB is?
MWSB, thank you for asking that question, because maybe you're not the only one with that question. Minority Women and Small Business Enterprises. So we have a 35% commitment, a project that is currently valued at about $687 million, I believe, just shy of $700 million, to deliver 35% of the total costs into MWSB businesses, minority, women-owned, and small business.
So exactly how will that happen? How will that be accomplished?
So we're actually gathering names right now of companies and people who can perform all different types of work, from construction to design to, engineering and so on. So we're actively gathering names today, and this project has some time before it actually gets started. So in order to meet that goal, and my company at Peebles, we've been in business for 30+ years, and we have accomplished this goal on many of our deals in different levels. Our latest project in New York City, it's about a $500 million deal, and we're going to hit the 20% goal there. So we're looking to exceed that in different markets. In Boston, we have a project, I believe our goal is 25% there. So it's something that we have done in the past. Again, it's not easy, but we're looking to fill that in different areas, different buckets. But it starts with having meetings like this to make everyone become aware that, yes, we are in search. And if you're interested in our project, please get in in touch with us through many different ways, from Twitter to our site and so on.
I have another question over here.
That was my question. How do we participate as subcontractors? Is there a pre-qualification paperwork or forms at this time?
So if you visit, if you just search Brooklyn Village, you'll arrive at our website. And on our website, there's a tab that's dedicated to MWSBE. You can provide your name, mailing address, email address, et cetera, and the type of business that you're involved in. And we're a repository. We don't certify firms. I mean, one of the things that's been instructional for me, because we have gotten after this in very material ways already with sessions dedicated to MWSB, and then I've gone and presented on it personally outside of this process at Ubuntu and Velma League's Small Business Consortium and on, is to drive folks to the certification process, for those folks who are not certified, to get them certified, and for folks who are certified, to make them aware of the opportunity and the timing and so on, so that they can be in touch with us as we move forward and stay abreast of what those opportunities look like. Once we get into releasing work and so on, we'll undertake another effort entirely, likely in conjunction with the county and others. The county is the group that's really holding on to all the MWSBE information. They will help push out the offerings that we have from time to time in an effort to track down contractors. We also will have at least one, and probably more than one, consultant on the team whose sole role is to help us achieve the participation goals that we have in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Leaks is having a meeting today at 11:30 at the Government Center. There you can become certified. They'll walk you through the steps of becoming certified. So if you're interested, it starts today at 11:30 at the Government Center. I can give you more information later. Okay?
The gentleman with the Ennis? Okay, how you doing? Okay, I heard you talking about a documentary.
Yes.
Okay, now, I remember having seen bits and pieces of a PBS documentary about the Brooklyn neighborhood.
Yes.
Is that the documentary that you were referring to?
I believe that is. I know there have been a couple of films, but this is the one that's most widely known. It was called A Colored School, and it primarily focused on Second Ward, but
Second
it
Ward High
touched
School,
on all of Brooklyn at length. And we actually, anybody that was at the opening town hall, we showed a brief excerpt from that film in order to kind of set the table for the conversation to follow. But the producer and the filmmaker has graciously given us the opportunity to put the entire film on display prior to the meeting starting at 6. So we're actually going to show the documentary starting at 5:30.
Okay, is there any way that we can obtain or purchase copies of that?
Absolutely. The young lady over here, Miss Ela, actually has the ability to sell you the DVD. The Second Ward Alumni Association is involved in marketing that, so absolutely.
I have a copy today. I would like to purchase it today. Okay, fantastic. Because I have family in New York that went to Second Ward High School. And when I told them about this documentary, she's like, 88 years old?
Right.
And she wants to see this so bad.
Oh, great.
So I want to get a copy to give to her.
What's your?
Margie McCrae.
Awesome.
Okay, that's my question.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you very much.
That's great. No, thank you.
I mean, I'm not from Shaw. I grew up in New York City.
Right.
But watching that and understanding the history and the lives, of the people that grew up in that area and just have it, decimated pretty much I thought it was devastating.
It's galling. It absolutely is. And
I'm glad to
so-
see it coming back, the essence of it, trying to be revitalized,
Thank you.
Can I piggyback on that? We also have a alumni house that has numerous amounts of history there. And you might even see a picture of whoever you're talking about. Because we've got some pictures. It's located at 1905 Beatties Ford Road. Right now, we having some construction done to our roof, but if you'll call, we'll give you a number, and you can make an appointment to come by. We also have a book called The Brooklyn Story, and it has a lot of pictures, and it's very instrumental in passing the history on.
Ms. Lucas, are y'all going to be set up tomorrow with a table?
Yes.
Okay, super.
Black America series, Acadia. We'll also
And also shirts and hats?
Yes.
Great.
Another
And
question
also,
over
I just
here.
want to say one more thing. We've been filming all of these sessions too, so, if she had interest not only in the past, but also what's going to happen, we have all. Never know. So, but. Yep, so we have the history with the films and everything, but we also have what we're doing moving forward, and they're all on the,
They're all on YouTube, our website, and the county's website. YouTube's probably easiest. If she has access to the internet, she has access to every one of these meetings. Brooklyn Village, yep, and the whole series will come up, yep.
Morning. My question is around the housing. I assume there's for-sale housing that'll be there. What will be the median prices of the for-sale housing?
But we haven't established that. No idea what the housing pricing will be. It'll probably be 2 years or more till we even break ground. It is a high-rise building, so they're not going to be inexpensive. But I can't say that they're going to be $1 million either. The planning that we have in front of the county today is very formative. The key number in all of the information that we have in front of the county is 2.3 million square feet. We have hotels in there, housing of different types, et cetera. And there are certain things I think, and I'm asked Dennis to throw me under the bus on this if I'm getting it wrong, but certain things we're going to need to come to the altar on. I mean, if we say we're going to do this much on affordable housing, that needs to happen. If we're going to do X, Y, Z with the park, that needs to happen. Many other elements of the plan will be malleable so that we have the opportunity to respond to the market.
Thank you. My other question is, when you look at this development architecturally and aesthetically, how will it be different than the other recent developments we see that are beginning to create kind of this cookie cutter urban renewal, South End and different areas that looks similar to kind of the drawings? What will make this unique and different than what we're seeing in the other parts of the uptown area?
We have 11 different blocks so far that behave as unique development projects unto themselves. We'll be taking the land down with the county. Currently, the plan is to buy the land from the county in 3 different phases. So it follows that the development will benefit from more incremental rollouts, different architects presenting different buildings at different times. So one of the things that we suggested to the county very early on was that we would do a better job of delivering a development that felt more granular and not monolithic when viewed, say, from those aerials. And when you're on the sidewalk, ideally, even more granular, so that as a pedestrian in that sort of 18-foot square space that you're moving through as you walk down the sidewalk, that you find something very engaging.
And our company has done deals from the Bay Area to the East Coast, and right now we're pretty much on the East Coast. So I think coming from New York City, which is where we're based out of, I think we could bring that little bit of change too. Again, we've done business in DC and Miami, so I think to the extent that we could do something that's different, we're certainly going to look to do that. But certainly it needs to make sense, right? Certainly to build something a little more fancy costs more, so the rents are going to have to work and so on.
The other thing is that this product type doesn't really exist in this market today. The fully unified, walkable, urban kind of community. And we've talked a lot about bringing inspiration from all over the world, really, to be able to have that kind of varied architecture and the varied look that you're talking about. I would not conclude from the drawings that you saw from the presentation Monty did that that's the look, that kind of, boxy look. That's really representative, which is what Monty was saying. I forget the word you used, formative, I think. But that'll be evolving, and we want to do something that's really special here.
Yeah, I think first we need to figure out what goes. I think that's probably the hardest part. What goes and what goes first and so on. And then certainly we could develop the plan on what the building's going to look like.
Something you can watch for there if you want to remain engaged on that. Brooklyn Village South has some entitlements on it already that give us a tremendous amount of flexibility. We will almost certainly be rezoning Brooklyn Village North for reasons that I won't bore you with, but that will be a public process, and you can certainly get engaged in that and provide feedback on what you're seeing. Because it's an urban district, there will be some architectural requirements of us, some planning requirements that are, say, more demanding than building a strip center in the suburbs somewhere. So a good bit more demanding than building a strip center in the suburbs. So please keep an eye out for that and participate if you'd like.
I have a couple of questions. The first one is that, are you aware that there's a group going to ask the city of Charlotte to to make some dedicated bikeways in the city? I'm pretty sure one of them will be probably along 3rd Street. So are you aware?
I'd ask Dennis to speak to the global planning process on the bikeways and so on, but we are at least tangentially aware of that, right? And we board it. I'd ask Dennis to speak to that a little bit more.
Yes, we're absolutely aware, and we're engaged in a variety of conversations around the bike-ped connection, and we all right, I'll say me, more selfishly, personally, view Martin Luther King as being a real opportunity as it is embedded in this neighborhood and connects to the gym and all of those things to actually create a very elegant path that would connect Romare Bearden to the Second Ward Park, the future Second Ward Park, and create what was identified as a ward loop in the Center City vision plans in 2010 and 2020. You could easily put MLK on a road diet a la East Boulevard and create opportunities for additional bike-ped connections, maybe even green connections, maybe even things that don't look like hardscape, like a sidewalk at all. So we're actually having those sorts of conversations because the city was looking at pushing the bike lanes out against 277 on the backside of the Stonewall developments, and I personally, with my planner hat on, don't see that as being the best option for bike riders to be, between tall buildings and a bunch of cars as a place to ride. So looking at an opportunity to really create that sort of alley and a natural connection between the ballpark and Romare Bearden and the Second Ward Park and the heart of the reimagined Brooklyn Village looks like a really great opportunity. So we are actively engaging in those conversations.
Great. And I live uptown, and I'm a biker and I'm a walker. And I tend not to access Little Sugar Creek Greenway through Stonewall because of all the opportunities for being run over. So I tend to use 3rd Street, and it's much safer because you don't have the entryways and exits from the highway, which is kind of, nice to have the park on that street. But I also worry that it's up against a bunch of county buildings that have no activation on that side of 3rd Street. Whereas if you put it on MLK Boulevard, you flip it, it would adjoin right across the street the Aquatic Center green space and also the green space supported by the gym, the Second Ward gym. Just some thoughts of a citizen.
Thank you. Yeah, we have seen iterations with the park on MLK, just as an example, so that's not a non-starter for us, and appreciate the feedback on that.
Me again. This is for Greg. I have a particular interest in the Entrepreneurial Institute. I was wondering if you could speak directly to that at all.
Yeah, sure. And we're going to be speaking more about it tomorrow night.
Won't be here tomorrow,
Oh, you're not going to be here
unfortunately.
tomorrow? Okay, that's fine. So the Entrepreneurial Academy, Don Peebles, who's the owner of the company of Peebles, he had formed that in Washington, D.C. back in, I want to say, he did his first hotel deal in '95, I want to say. And it was part of the Courtyard. And I think the way that Don sees it is hotel jobs are good jobs. They're well paying. And I think Don sees it as a way to train hotel and employees for the, for all these buildings that are going up. Certainly, how many rooms are going up at this point? 2,000 rooms? I don't know anymore. So I think there are a lot of jobs there, and I think we kind of see it to take it upon ourselves to train people to get those jobs.
Excuse me, is Don going to be here today at some point?
He will be here tonight at the 6 p.m. meeting, and he'll also be tomorrow 6 to 8.
Thank you.
Other questions?
That's a pretty good ratio of questions to attendance, actually. So yeah, that's as many questions as we get from a room of 80, so you all are doing great.
I have one more comment. I just wanted to reiterate, it is my understanding there is going to be a covered walkway between the Aquatic Center and the Second Ward gym. So just want to let you all know about that.
Yeah, so we're not driving that. I'd ask Dennis if he can speak to that at all. I know there's a lot of conversation around that. We would, of course, like to see Myers Passage run through there. How that ultimately is resolved remains to be seen, but maybe Dennis can provide some color on that.
I think that's pretty accurate. I think the manager's office is very interested in seeing Myers Passage happen and looking at alternate ways to make the connection between the gym and the aquatic center. Some way to make a connection, but a way that doesn't impede that natural flow for Myers Passage, because we believe that that's one of the keys that's going to help activate the park and the gym from the Brooklyn south side, and not kind of leave that out on an island. I mean, to somebody else's point about what else has gone on here in Charlotte, there's some things on Stonewall that aren't particularly attractive. There's some things on McDowell that aren't particularly attractive. So having another connection into the Brooklyn Village North site across the Aquatic Center campus, helping to activate the Aquatic Center and the gym and the green space there, and tying into the park, we believe that that's a pretty critical connection there in order to help make that more of a cohesive whole. Exactly. Then so much the better, absolutely. And I think, again, going back to Monty's point, what you saw in all of these renderings, I'm going to speak a little out of turn because I wasn't in the room, but they lashed this thing together as a response to an RFP in a hurry in order to make a deadline. And so they had to put blocks and shapes and things on a piece of paper. But we were more interested.
The effort was a little bit more than that. It was a little bit more than blocks and shapes on a piece of paper.
And it still looked better than anyone else's,
Heads
too.
up on that.
It really wasn't. They want to make it sound like it's harder than it is, but that's okay. But what we as the county were investing in relative to our partner was somebody who articulated a program, committed to it, and exceeded every one of the minimums that we put in place, because we did have minimums on open space, we did have minimums on the number of affordable housing units, and they far exceeded those minimums. So in evaluating the responses, we weren't evaluating based on the pretty pictures, we were evaluating based on the statements that they made and then their willingness to back them up, the things like the 35% MSWBE, which nobody took a walk out on that limb. Nobody did. So the economic opportunity, this approach to retail that they've discussed very briefly, those sorts of things were not articulated by any of the other competing firms. So that was what we got into. That's what we're forming the partnership on, and where the park ultimately lands, how big the park ultimately is, how many housing units. Yeah, today it says it's 1,070, but it could be 2,300 if that's what the market says ultimately. It's 2 hotels today, but I've heard stories from folks. Just today I met with a guy who was in here from Florida and could not get a room in Charlotte on a Monday night, on a random Monday night in Charlotte.
For someone who's been traveling from New York City to Charlotte every other week, it is hard to get a room here. There's no question.
So I mean, what we're seeing here is a baseline. It only goes up from here, and I think that's one of the other things also to answer the question about how do we know it's not going to be what we've seen here, which is a lot of 3, 4, 5-story stick-built stuff. It's because this is more intense, this is denser, these are taller buildings, this is stuff that's going to have to be built of concrete and steel, and that naturally tends to hew away from a lot of the stuff that we're seeing in South End and other places.
Yeah, I think the worst thing for us would be to build something and then in 10 years tear it down, right? So we're trying to plan for the future here too. Certainly Charlotte, the way that it's moving, it is definitely headed that way. So I mean, we do have a challenge to kind of balance what Charlotte is and then what it's heading towards. And that's why I think this is a project that, at least not maybe the second or third phases, can be rushed, because you certainly want to build something that is going to work in the, you're right, there are some buildings that we look at like, oh, that's not going to work soon. But it's cheap to build, and with the rent, it makes sense. So I, from an investment point of view, I get why they're building that. But certainly I think the way that Charlotte's headed, it's just not going to work in the Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.